I'm Audrey, 28 years old when my entire world collapsed in our living room. The night my parents told me they regretted having me, I didn't scream or argue. I simply nodded, went upstairs, and started packing. 20 years of diary entries chronicled my desperate attempts to earn their love. Despite becoming an award-winning photographer, nothing was ever enough. They never saw me until they found my diary a week later. By then, I was already gone. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who should love you most, my story might feel familiar. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength when family fails you. My earliest memories are filled with reaching for approval that always stayed just beyond my grasp. At 5 years old, I remember bringing home a drawing from kindergarten. A family portrait with stick figures and a bright yellow sun. My mother Margaret barely glanced at it before telling me to wash my hands for dinner. My father Richard didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Very nice, Audrey," he muttered, turning the page. The drawing ended up in the trash before bedtime. This became our family's rhythm. My achievements were background noise in a house concerned with appearances and status. Our suburban home in Connecticut was immaculate, my clothes always pressed, my hair always neatly brushed. But beneath the perfect family facade, I was starving for connection. When I was 8, my grandmother Eleanor gave me my first diary for Christmas. It had a soft blue cover with a tiny silver lock. "This is for your special thoughts," she whispered, slipping me the miniature key. "Sometimes it helps to write down the things we can't say out loud." That diary became my confidant, my therapist, my best friend. The first entry, written in childish scrawl with a purple pen, read, "Dear Diary, I got an A on my spelling test today. Mom was on the phone when I told her. Dad is working late again. Grandma Eleanor says I'm smart like her." By 3rd grade, I was winning academic awards. My teacher, Mrs. Wilson, nominated me for the district's Young Writers competition. I won first place with a story about a girl who could talk to birds. The certificate ceremony happened during a school assembly, and as I scanned the audience from the stage, I realized I was the only child accepting an award without a parent present. My mother had a hair appointment she couldn't reschedule. My father was closing an important business deal. "They're very proud of you," Mrs. Wilson assured me, but her eyes held pity that made my stomach hurt. I wrote in my diary that night, "I wish I could be louder so they could hear me." By age 10, I had perfected the art of being the perfect daughter. My room was spotless, my grades flawless. I never asked for expensive toys or complained about wearing the practical clothes my mother selected. I learned to anticipate needs before they were expressed. If my father seemed stressed, I'd silently bring him his reading glasses and favorite scotch. If my mother mentioned a headache, I'd fetch her medication before she asked. My 10th birthday fell on a Saturday. For weeks, I'd been promised a small party at the local ice cream parlor with a few friends from school. 3 days before, my father announced he needed to attend an important networking event that day. My mother decided we should reschedule. "It's just a birthday, Audrey," she said when she saw my disappointment. "You'll have one every year. Your father's connections are important for our family's future." We never rescheduled. My diary entry that night was tear-stained. They forgot that I'm part of the family too. My grandmother Eleanor was my sanctuary. On weekends when I could visit her small cottage by the lake, I felt seen for the first time. She displayed my artwork on her refrigerator. She asked questions about my friends and classes and actually listened to my answers. "You have an artist's soul," she told me one summer afternoon when I showed her photographs I'd taken with the disposable camera she'd given me. "You see beauty in unexpected places." At school, I maintained my perfect student persona. Teachers praised my maturity and focus. What they didn't realize was that this performance was designed for an audience that never showed up to watch. Each report card, each academic certificate, each student council achievement was carefully documented in my diary, along with the non-reactions they received at home. Mom said, "That's nice," without looking up from her magazine when I told her I was elected class president. Dad promised to come to the science fair but called an hour before to say he had a dinner meeting. My volcano won second place. By 12. I understood that my role in our family was to be self-sufficient and undemanding. While other parents volunteered for school functions and cheered at soccer games, mine maintained a polite distance from my daily life. I learned to forge their signatures on permission slips, to explain their absences to teachers, to smile and say they're just really busy when friends asked why they never saw my parents. The diary chronicled it all, a paper witness to the quiet neglect that shaped my childhood years. Yet between entries of disappointment, I still wrote of my love for them, my desperate hope that someday I would do something remarkable enough to make them truly see me. I think Dad almost smiled when I told him about my math award. Maybe next time he'll be proud enough to tell me. Mom bought me new shoes today and let me pick the style. I think she's starting to care about what I like. Hope is resilient in children. Despite years of evidence to the contrary, I never stopped believing that tomorrow might be the day they'd finally love me the way I needed to be loved. High school intensified my invisible battle. While maintaining a 4.0 GPA, I navigated the complicated social landscape of adolescence without parental guidance. My mother's advice was limited to appearances. Stand up straight, Audrey. First impressions matter. My father's guidance focused solely on achievement. Colleges look at every grade, not just senior year. My diary entries from this period grew longer, more introspective. At 14, I wrote, I wonder if it's possible to disappear while still being physically present. Sometimes I feel like a ghost in my own house. Photography became my emotional outlet in 9th grade when my art teacher, Mr. Davis, loaned me an old Nikon camera. You have a natural eye for composition, he said after seeing my first roll of black and white photos. There's a sadness in your perspective that's quite compelling. I saved every dollar from babysitting jobs to develop my photographs. My bedroom closet became a makeshift gallery, hidden images of abandoned buildings, elderly people on park benches, children playing in rain puddles. I captured the overlooked, the forgotten, the beautiful mundane moments others walked past without seeing. When I turned 16, I asked for a camera of my own. My mother frowned. Photography is a hobby, Audrey, not a career path. You need to focus on practical skills. Instead, they gave me a leather planner to keep track of college application deadlines. My grandmother Eleanor was the only one who nurtured my passion. On a visit during spring break of sophomore year, she took me to a photography exhibit at a small gallery near her home. This is what your soul has been trying to tell you, she whispered as we stood before haunting images of urban landscapes. Some people speak through their art when words fail them. That summer, Eleanor bought me my first real camera, a second-hand Canon that became my most treasured possession. I kept it hidden from my parents, knowing they would see it as a distraction. My diary became a confessional for my divided life. Submitted college applications for business programs today like Dad wanted. Spent 3 hours afterward photographing the abandoned factory by the river. The contrast between what I'm supposed to want and what makes me feel alive is exhausting. Junior year brought my first panic attack after an argument with my parents about summer plans. They had arranged an internship at my father's friend's financial firm without consulting me. When I mentioned a photography workshop I wanted to attend instead, my mother's dismissal was swift. This artistic phase needs to end, Audrey. It's time to grow up and think about your future. That night, alone in my bathroom, I couldn't breathe. My heart raced as tears streamed down my face. I felt trapped in a life that wasn't mine. My diary entry afterward was just one line: I don't think I can survive being who they want me to be. The following week, I secretly applied for a national high school photography contest with a series of portraits called Invisible Youth, featuring teenagers from my school caught in moments of unguarded emotion. When the acceptance letter arrived saying I was a finalist, I hid it from my parents and told my art teacher instead. This is a significant achievement, Audrey, Mr. Davis said. The judges are established professionals. Your parents must be very proud. I nodded and said nothing. The award ceremony was in New York City. I told my parents I was staying overnight with a friend to work on a school project. My grandmother Eleanor was too ill to accompany me, so I went alone, 17 years old, on a train to Manhattan, clutching my portfolio with sweaty hands. When they announced my name as the second-place winner, presenting me with a certificate and a check for $500, I had no one to hug in celebration. I called Eleanor from the station before heading home. "I'm so proud of you, my darling girl," she said, her voice weak but warm. "You're finding your voice through your lens." The prize money went into a secret savings account I opened with Eleanor's help. My parents never knew about the award or the check. In my diary that night, I wrote, "I stood on a stage today and heard people applaud my work. For 3 minutes, I existed as myself, not as Richard and Margaret's daughter. I need to feel that again." Senior year brought college acceptances and the inevitable confrontation about my future. I was admitted to several business schools as my parents expected, but also received a scholarship offer from an arts college known for its photography program. "This isn't open for discussion," my father said when I showed them the arts school letter. "No daughter of mine is wasting her education on an impractical degree that leads nowhere. We want what's best for you," my mother added. "You'll thank us later." In my diary, I wrote, "They've never asked what I want. Not once. Do they even know me at all?" I accepted the business school offer, watching my alternative future dissolve like developing fluid circling a drain. But privately, I made a promise to myself, written in my diary and witnessed only by the pages that had held my truth for years. I will find a way to become who I am meant to be, even if I have to do it in secret. College brought physical distance, but not emotional freedom. I enrolled in the business program at a university 3 hours from home, selecting marketing as my major because it seemed least offensive to my creative instincts. My parents paid my tuition with the understanding that I would maintain a GPA above 3.5 and eventually secure a corporate position that would justify their investment. What they didn't know was that I structured my schedule to include photography electives. My advisor, Professor Lawrence, helped me navigate course requirements to create space for art classes while still satisfying my major requirements. "You're living a double life," he observed during my sophomore year advising meeting. "That takes a toll eventually." My diary entries from this period reflected growing resentment alongside determination. Presented a marketing campaign in morning class, photography portfolio review in afternoon. The business students see me as creative. The art students see me as corporate. No one sees all of me except this diary. In my junior year, I met Sarah Jameson, a visiting photography instructor who recognized something in my work that others had missed. "You photograph absence," she said, studying my portfolio. "Empty chairs, half-open doors, spaces where people should be but aren't. Your technical skills are strong, but it's the emotional content that's compelling." Under Sarah's mentorship, I began developing a cohesive artistic voice. She helped me apply for a student exhibition where 3 of my photographs were selected for display. I didn't tell my parents about the exhibition, knowing they would see it as a distraction from my real studies. Instead, I wrote in my diary, "My work hung on gallery walls today. Strangers stood before my photographs and felt something. This is the most authentic version of myself I've ever been allowed to share publicly." By senior year, I was working part-time at a small art gallery near campus, learning the business side of the art world while building connections with local photographers. The gallery owner, Marcus, became another mentor who saw potential in both my artistic and organizational skills. "You understand both sides of the creative industry," he told me. "That's remarkably rare and valuable." When graduation approached, my parents' expectations loomed large. They attended the ceremony, appropriately proud of my business degree and marketing honors. They didn't know about the photography minor I'd completed or the student awards my work had received. "We always knew you'd excel when you applied yourself to something practical," my father said at the celebratory dinner they hosted. "Now for a position worthy of your capabilities." Through their connections, I was offered an entry-level marketing position at a financial services firm in Boston. The salary was generous, the benefits comprehensive, the work mind-numbing. I accepted with a smile and moved into a small apartment that included a closet I could convert to a darkroom. My diary documented my growing division. Spent 9 hours creating spreadsheets that no one will remember tomorrow. Spent 3 hours in the darkroom creating images that made me feel alive again. This balance isn't sustainable. For 2 years, I maintained the facade of the successful young professional my parents had envisioned. During weekdays, I developed marketing strategies and attended networking events. Evenings and weekends belonged to my camera and darkroom. I built a portfolio in secret, submitting work to small galleries and online publications under a shortened version of my name that wouldn't immediately connect to my professional identity. During this time, my grandmother Eleanor's health deteriorated. Weekend visits to her became more frequent as cancer slowly claimed her. In her final months, we had conversations that sustained me through the growing disconnect between my parallel lives. "I've watched you split yourself in two to please them," she told me during one visit, her hand trembling as she reached for mine. "That kind of division wounds the soul, Audrey." "I don't know how to choose," I confessed. "Disappointing them feels impossible." "The only impossible thing," she whispered, "is continuing to disappoint yourself." 2 weeks before she died, Eleanor made me promise to eventually pursue my passion fully. "Not right away," she said, "but someday soon, when you're ready. Promise me you won't wait until you're old and full of regrets like I am." I promised through tears, holding her frail hand and feeling the weight of her wisdom. After Eleanor's funeral, which my parents attended with appropriate solemnity but little genuine grief, I found myself at a crossroads. My grandmother had left me a small inheritance, not substantial but enough to provide a safety net. In my diary that night, I wrote, "Eleanor gave me both permission and means to choose myself. The question is whether I have the courage to use them." For months, I continued my double existence, working corporate hours while building my portfolio at night. The physical and emotional exhaustion began to show. I lost weight, developed insomnia, and found myself crying in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks. My diary entries grew darker. "I'm failing at both lives now. Too exhausted to be creative after mind-numbing days. Too resentful of wasted time to be effective at work. Something has to give before I shatter completely." The decision crystallized gradually, then suddenly. A photograph I'd submitted to a regional arts journal was selected for the cover, along with a feature on emerging photographers. The issue was published the same week I was passed over for a promotion at work. That night, I wrote in my diary, "Eleanor was right. The only impossible thing is continuing to betray myself. I choose me." With Eleanor's inheritance, I purchased professional camera equipment and began building a business plan for freelance photography work. I didn't quit my corporate job immediately, instead reducing to part-time hours while establishing photography clients on the side. Each small step toward independence felt like learning to breathe again after years underwater. My diary entry shifted in tone, photographed a family portrait session today that paid as much as 3 days at the firm. The difference was I came home energized instead of depleted. 6 months into this transition, I met Kimberly Lewis at a gallery opening where one of my photographs was displayed. She was a graphic designer who needed photography for her clients and appreciated my aesthetic. We began collaborating, her connections leading to more commercial work that helped stabilize my finances. "You have a unique perspective," Kimberly said after we completed a successful project for a local business. "You find beauty in ordinary moments that others miss." That's marketable. Kimberly became not just a professional connection, but my first real friend since college. She was the first person I invited to my apartment, the first to see my complete portfolio, the first to hear the unvarnished truth about my relationship with my parents. "Have they seen your work?" she asked one evening as we reviewed photographs for a client. "They don't even know this part of my life exists," I admitted. "They think I'm still fully committed to corporate success." "That's a heavy secret to carry," she observed without judgment. The weight grew heavier when I was invited to exhibit in a group show featuring emerging photographers. It would be my first significant public exhibition, a validation of years working in the shadows. When the gallery sent formal invitations, I hesitated before sending one to my parents. A peace offering and perhaps a plea for understanding. They didn't attend. My mother called the morning of the opening to explain they had a neighborhood association meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. My father didn't come to the phone. In my diary that night, surrounded by congratulatory messages from Kimberly and new arts community friends, their absence has become so familiar it has its own presence in my life. An empty chair I keep saving just in case. The exhibition led to more opportunities, magazine assignments, portrait sessions, and eventually an offer to teach a weekend photography workshop at a community arts center. My corporate hours continued to decrease as my creative work expanded, until maintaining both became impossible. The day I submitted my resignation letter, I felt both terror and exhilaration. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house for our monthly dinner, planning to share my new direction. The announcement went exactly as feared. "This is the most irresponsible decision you could make," my father said, his disappointment hardening his features. "Throwing away a stable career for a hobby. We didn't invest in your education for you to become a struggling artist," my mother added. This is clearly Eleanor's influence. She never understood practical realities. The mention of my grandmother ignited something new in me, a protective rage on behalf of the only person who had truly seen me. "Eleanor was the only one who ever asked what I wanted," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "She was the only one who celebrated my true gifts instead of trying to reshape me." "We've only wanted what's best for you," my mother countered. "No," I replied, "you've wanted what's most comfortable for you. There's a difference." I left before dessert was served, their ultimatum ringing in my ears: return to corporate work or stop expecting their support, financially or emotionally. In my car, I felt the strange lightness that comes with having nothing left to lose. My diary entry that night was brief. "I am finally free to fail or succeed as myself, not as their idea of me." The next months were challenging but transformative. I found a smaller apartment with cheaper rent, took on commercial photography projects that paid bills while developing my artistic portfolio, and slowly built a reputation in the local arts community. Kimberly's network provided clients and her friendship offered support when doubts crept in. My parents' communications dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and occasional terse emails. I sent them updates about my photography business, small successes, and new clients, which were acknowledged with polite disinterest. In my diary, I processed the grief of losing a relationship that had always been more theoretical than actual. How do you mourn the absence of something you never really had? I'm grieving a fantasy family, parents who might have been proud of the real me. Despite the emotional turmoil, my work flourished. By my 28th birthday, I had established a viable photography business, published work in several regional magazines, and developed a distinctive style that was gaining recognition. When the invitation came to submit work for a prestigious regional arts award, I almost dismissed it as beyond my reach. "Apply," Kimberly insisted. "You've earned the right to be considered." The nomination itself felt like validation, an acknowledgement from the artistic community that my vision had value. When the call came that I was a finalist, I sat on my apartment floor and wept, overwhelmed by the journey from hidden hobby to public recognition. Against my better judgment, I sent my parents an invitation to the awards ceremony. To my shock, they agreed to attend. "Perhaps they're finally ready to see me," I wrote in my diary. "After all these years, maybe we can find common ground in my success." Hope, that resilient child within me, dared to believe in reconciliation. The awards ceremony was held in a renovated historical building downtown, its brick walls hung with the finalists' work. My series, titled Visible/Invisible, featured portraits of people at moments when they believed themselves unobserved, capturing authentic emotion rarely displayed publicly. I arrived early, nervously checking details and exchanging greetings with other photographers. When my parents entered, precisely on time and formally dressed, I felt a familiar tightening in my chest. "Thank you for coming," I said, embracing them awkwardly. "My work is displayed in the East Gallery." "You look thin," my mother observed. "Are you eating properly?" My father surveyed the venue with a businessman's assessing gaze. "Quite a crowd. Is this type of event profitable for the organizers?" Before I could answer, the program began. We took our seats, my parents flanking me like formal bookends. The awards presentation included brief videos about each finalist's work and approach. Watching myself on screen, speaking confidently about my artistic vision, I felt a momentary disconnect between the assured professional on display and the anxious daughter sitting between her parents. When my name was announced as the winner, the room erupted in applause. I walked to the stage in a daze, accepted the glass trophy and grant check, and delivered the brief speech I'd prepared just in case. From the podium, I could see my parents' expressions. My mother's tight smile, my father's impassive assessment. At the reception afterward, colleagues and gallery owners approached with congratulations and business cards. Through it all, my parents stood slightly apart, accepting introductions with polite nods, but volunteering nothing. "Your daughter has remarkable talent," the head judge told them. "Such emotional depth in her work. You must be very proud." "Audrey has always been determined," my father replied, the non-answer hanging awkwardly in the air. The drive to their house afterward, where I'd agreed to stay overnight, was silent until my mother asked, "Will this award lead to more stable opportunities?" "The grant allows me to pursue a new project," I explained. "And the recognition opens doors to galleries and publications that were previously inaccessible. But nothing permanent," my father concluded. "No benefits or retirement plan." I took a deep breath. My business is growing. I'm supporting myself doing work I love and excel at. That's not nothing. We arrived at their house, the same immaculate space where I'd grown up feeling invisible. In the living room, with the award placed on the coffee table between us, the conversation circled back to familiar territory. "We worry about your future security," my mother said. "This artistic lifestyle seems so precarious." "I'm doing well," I insisted. "My income has been steady for months now." "The business is growing. You could have been on a management track by now," my father countered. "Davidson mentioned they're expanding their marketing department. He would still consider your application." "I don't want that life," I said simply. "Because Eleanor filled your head with impractical notions," my mother sighed. She meant well, but she never understood responsibility. The mention of my grandmother ignited the same protective rage I'd felt months earlier. Eleanor was the only person who ever saw me clearly, who encouraged my actual talents instead of trying to force me into a mold that never fit. "We've only wanted success for you," my father insisted, his voice rising. "A stable career instead of this constant financial uncertainty. Practical skills instead of subjective artistic whims." "The award I just won comes with a 5-figure grant," I said. "My work was selected from hundreds of submissions by industry professionals." "How is that not success?" "It's not sustainable," he dismissed. "One grant doesn't build a secure future." "Nothing is secure," I countered. "People get laid off from corporations every day. At least I'm building something that's truly mine." My father stood, frustration tightening his features. "You're wasting your potential on pretty pictures when you could be developing real professional skills. This photography phase has gone on long enough." "Phase?" I echoed, disbelieving. "I've been passionate about photography since I was 14 years old. You just never bothered to notice." "We noticed plenty," my mother interjected. "Your grades slipping when you were distracted by art projects. College applications to impractical programs we had to redirect. Always with the camera. Always in your own world instead of focusing on developing useful connections." "My world," I repeated slowly. "Yes, I created my own world because there was no place for the real me in yours." My father shook his head. "This melodrama is exactly why we pushed you toward business. You've always been too emotional, too impractical." "Richard," my mother cautioned, but he continued. 28 years we've tried to guide you toward sensible choices, and you fight us at every turn. Sometimes I wonder why we bothered at all." "Richard, enough," my mother said sharply. "No, Margaret, she needs to hear this. We've sacrificed and planned and provided every advantage, and she throws it away for this artistic indulgence. Sometimes I regret having invested so much in someone so determined to disappoint us. Sometimes I regret having you at all," my mother added quietly, then pressed her hand to her mouth as if trying to capture the words and pull them back. The room fell silent. The statement hung in the air between us, too honest to be unsaid, too brutal to be misunderstood. I felt strangely calm, as if a question I'd been asking my entire life had finally been answered definitively. "I see," I said finally, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. "Thank you for your honesty." I picked up my award from the coffee table and walked upstairs to my old bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. No tears came. Instead, a strange clarity descended as I looked around the impersonal guest room that had once been mine, stripped of any evidence of my adolescence and redecorated in neutral tones. I waited until their bedroom lights switched off before I began packing my overnight bag, added my toiletries from the bathroom, collected my award and purse. Then, almost as an afterthought, I retrieved my current journal from my bag and placed it on the perfectly made bed, a silent goodbye letter. I drove back to my apartment through empty streets, the car radio off. The silence a companion rather than an absence. By morning, I had emailed both my parents' contacts from my phone and removed them from my social media accounts. Before noon, I had accepted Kimberly's offer to stay in her spare room until I could decide what came next. My diary entry that night, in a new journal purchased from an all-night convenience store, contained just one line: "Now I am truly the author of my own story." The week following my departure unfolded in a strange dreamlike state. Kimberly's spare room became my sanctuary as I processed the finality of the break. My phone accumulated voicemails and texts from my parents, their tone evolving from angry to confused to concerned. "Audrey, this is childish. Call us immediately." My father, the morning after. "We need to discuss what happened. Running away solves nothing." My mother, that afternoon. "We're worried about you. Please let us know you're safe." Both of them by the third day. I responded with a brief text: "I'm safe and staying with a friend. I need space to think." Kimberly respected my need for solitude while ensuring I ate and slept. During daylight hours, I functioned almost normally, meeting with clients, editing photographs, even laughing at dinner with Kimberly and her boyfriend Thomas. But nights brought waves of grief that felt bottomless. "It's like mourning people who are still alive," I told Kimberly one evening. "Except I'm also mourning the parents I wish they had been." "You're grieving the fantasy and accepting the reality," she said. "That takes tremendous courage." The award I'd won brought new professional opportunities. A prominent online arts magazine requested an interview. A gallery owner called about a potential solo exhibition. The external validation stood in stark contrast to the internal devastation. In my new diary, I wrote, "Success and heartbreak arriving simultaneously." Perhaps that's always been my pattern. Achievement shadowed by personal loss. By the end of the week, I needed to collect more clothes and personal items from my parents' house. Kimberly offered to accompany me, but this was a journey I needed to make alone. I timed my visit for a Tuesday afternoon when I knew they would be at work. The house key I'd never returned felt heavy in my palm as I unlocked the door to my childhood home. The house was silent, immaculate as always. I moved efficiently, packing summer clothes, photography books, and the few mementos I couldn't replace. In my old bedroom, now a tasteful guest room, I found evidence of recent occupation: a pillow indented, tissues in the wastebasket, my mother's reading glasses on the nightstand. They had been coming in here, perhaps looking for explanations. The thought gave me pause as I checked the closet and dresser for anything I might have missed. In the hallway, about to leave, I remembered my childhood diary and the journals that followed. They were stored in a box in the attic, documents of my invisible life that I couldn't leave behind. I climbed the attic stairs and found the box easily, its contents undisturbed for years. The oldest diaries were on top, their childish locks and worn covers testaments to years of secret record-keeping. I packed them carefully in my bag, but as I hefted the box, the newest journal fell, sliding under an old trunk. In my haste to leave before my parents returned, I missed it, the blue leather journal that contained the past 2 years of my life, including the build-up to our final confrontation. It remained behind, hidden in the dust of the attic, as I locked the front door for what I believed was the final time. Back at Kimberly's apartment, I unpacked my childhood archives, these paper witnesses to years of quiet longing. Reading random entries transported me through time, my 10-year-old hope, my 16-year-old despair, my 20-year-old determination. The consistent thread was my search for validation from parents who seemed constitutionally unable to provide it. 3 days later, my phone rang with my mother's number. I had been declining their calls, but something made me answer this one. Audrey. Her voice sounded different, stripped of its usual composure. We found your diary. My stomach dropped. Which one? The recent one. In the attic. A pause. We've been reading it. The invasion of privacy should have angered me. But I felt oddly calm. Then you finally know me. We thought we did. Her voice broke. We were wrong. That evening, my father called. For the first time in my memory, he was crying. Did you really win a national photography contest in high school? He asked without preamble. Second place, I confirmed. I went to New York alone to accept it. You wrote that you called Eleanor from the train station. She was the only one I could tell. His sob was so unexpected I nearly dropped the phone. We didn't know you at all, did we? I had no answer that wouldn't wound us both further. The diary they found contained everything. My double life in college, my secret photography career built alongside my corporate job, my panic attacks in bathroom stalls, my grief when Eleanor died, my determination to honor her final request that I live authentically. It documented my loneliness, my achievements, my struggle to break free of their expectations, and yes, my enduring love for them despite everything. There's an entry from your 25th birthday, my mother said when she called again. You wrote that all you wanted was for us to ask about your photography just once, to show interest in what actually mattered to you. I remember writing that, I said quietly. Why didn't you tell us? The question was so absurd I nearly laughed. I tried. For years I tried. You never wanted to hear it. The diary became a bridge across decades of misunderstanding. Through its pages, they finally saw the daughter they had failed to know, the passion they had dismissed, the pain they had caused through neglect disguised as practical concern. You wrote that you still loved us, my father said during another call. Even after everything, you wrote that you understood we thought we were doing the right thing. I do understand that, I said. Understanding doesn't make it hurt less. A week after they found the diary, a letter arrived at Kimberly's apartment. Inside was a handwritten note from both of them. Something unprecedented in our family's history of emotional distance. We have failed you in ways we are only beginning to comprehend, it read. Your diary showed us a daughter we never truly saw, whose talents we dismissed, whose heart we neglected. We don't expect forgiveness, but we hope for the chance to know the remarkable woman you've become, despite us rather than because of us. I placed the letter in my new diary, a document of what felt like the first honest communication of our lives. The path to healing began with small, careful steps. 3 weeks after they found my diary, I agreed to meet my parents at a coffee shop, neutral territory where we could leave if the conversation became too difficult. They arrived early, tension evident in their posture as they waited at a corner table. Thank you for coming, my father said, his usual authoritative tone replaced by something tentative. We've been reading your other diaries, my mother admitted. The ones from when you were younger. I set down my coffee cup. You went through all of them. We needed to understand, my father said, how we failed you so completely. Their faces showed the weight of what they had discovered. Years of a child's desperate attempts to be seen, a teenager's hidden talents, a young woman's divided life. There's an entry from when you were 11, my mother said, her voice unsteady. After your school play, you wrote that you searched for us in the audience even though you knew we wouldn't be there. I remember that play, I said quietly. I had 3 lines. You wrote that you pretended Mrs. Wilson was there to see you specifically, not just her own daughter, my father added. You imagined her applauding just for you. The memory stung even now. Children are adaptable. They shouldn't have to be, my mother whispered. That first meeting lasted only 30 minutes, but it established a pattern. Weekly coffee shops conversations that gradually moved to restaurants, then walks in the park. Each time, they came having read more of my history, asking questions about moments they had missed or dismissed. "I'd like to see your work," my father said during our fourth meeting. "Your actual portfolio, not just the award pieces." The request was so unexpected I initially thought I'd misheard. "You want to see my photography?" "All of it," he confirmed. "From the beginning, if possible." The following week, I brought my portfolio to their house. For 3 hours, they paged through years of images, asking questions about techniques and inspirations, locations and subjects. My mother paused over a portrait of Eleanor, tears spilling onto the protective plastic. "She knew you," she said simply. "In ways we never tried to." She asked questions, I explained. And she listened to the answers. The healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments when old patterns reasserted themselves. During a dinner at their house, my father began questioning the financial viability of a project I was excited about. My body tensed, preparing for familiar dismissal. "I'm sorry," he said, catching himself. "I'm asking the wrong questions again. Tell me why this project matters to you." These course corrections became more frequent as we established new ways of relating. After 2 months of careful reconstruction, I suggested family therapy, expecting resistance. To my surprise, they agreed immediately. Dr. Brenner's office became another neutral territory where we learned to speak truthfully to one another. My parents talked about their own upbringings, revealing generational patterns of emotional distance and practical priorities. My father never once told me he was proud of me, my father admitted during a session. Success was expected, not celebrated. "I thought I was being responsible by focusing on your practical future. I never considered what it cost you emotionally." "I abandoned my own artistic interests to pursue a sensible career," my mother confessed. "When you showed similar inclinations, I think I resented your courage to pursue what I had surrendered." These revelations didn't erase the past, but they contextualized it, helping me understand that their failures stemmed from their own wounds rather than deliberate cruelty. 6 months after our separation, my first solo gallery exhibition opened. The feature series, titled Reconciliation, included images that explored the complicated terrain of family relationships, forgiveness, and self-discovery. When my parents arrived at the opening, they carried a small wrapped package. "We wanted to wait until tonight to give you this," my mother said. Inside was a leather-bound journal, similar to my first childhood diary, but sized for an adult. The inscription read, "For the next chapter of your story, we are finally learning to be proud of the extraordinary woman you've always been. Love, Mom and Dad." That night, surrounded by my photographs and the people who had supported my journey, I watched my parents engage with gallery patrons, explaining my techniques with newly acquired vocabulary and unmistakable pride. The sight was so surreal I had to step outside for a moment to catch my breath. Kimberly followed me onto the sidewalk. "You okay?" "I don't know what to do with this," I admitted. Them suddenly being the parents I always wanted. It feels like another loss in a way. All those years I can't get back. "You're grieving the childhood you deserved," she said, squeezing my hand. "That's legitimate. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." Inside my new journal that night, I wrote, "Healing doesn't erase the scars. It just builds new tissue around them, stronger in the broken places." The rebuilding of our relationship required continued intentionality from all sides. I maintained clear boundaries about my career and personal choices. They practiced asking different questions and truly listening to my answers. We all learned to acknowledge when old patterns emerged rather than pretending they didn't exist. My photography career continued to flourish. The exhibition led to teaching opportunities, commissioned projects, and publication in national arts magazines. Each success was celebrated with phone calls and dinners, my achievements no longer invisible to the people whose recognition I had craved for so long. A year after our confrontation, I felt a tenderness I hadn't expected to recover. "I want to understand what you see when you look through the lens," she explained during a break. "I've missed so much of your perspective." My father approached my work differently, helping me streamline the business aspects of my growing studio. He reviewed contracts, suggested accounting software, and connected me with a reliable business attorney. His practical skills became supportive rather than dismissive when aligned with my actual goals. The most profound lesson from our journey of reconciliation was learning that authentic relationships require complete truth, even when that truth is painful. My decades of silence and their decades of dismissal had created a chasm that only radical honesty could bridge. I read something in your college diary that haunts me. My father said during a Sunday dinner at their house. You wrote that you felt like a ghost in your own home, that we looked through you rather than at you. That was my reality for many years, I acknowledged. I don't want to be that father anymore, he said simply. I'm learning to see you clearly. My newest journal documents this unfolding chapter of unexpected healing. The entries reflect both lingering pain and genuine progress, the complicated reality of rebuilding what was broken. Some days still bring anger over all the years lost to misunderstanding. Other days bring gratitude for the possibility of connection, however belated. What I understand now is that forgiveness isn't a single decision but a daily practice. It doesn't require forgetting the past or pretending the damage never occurred. It simply means choosing to build something new on ground that once seemed permanently scorched. The diary that my parents found a year ago now sits on my bookshelf rather than hidden away. Its accidental discovery broke open decades of silence and pretense, allowing truth to finally enter the spaces between us. Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones we never intended others to read. If you're carrying similar wounds from people who should have loved you better, know that healing is possible, though rarely in the ways we imagine. Your story deserves to be heard, even if only in the pages of a private journal. And sometimes, when you least expect it, those who failed to listen might finally be ready to hear. Have you ever kept a diary or journal that helped you process difficult emotions? How did writing down your experiences change your perspective on them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more explorations of family dynamics, healing, and finding your authentic voice. Thank you for witnessing this chapter of my journey. And may you find the courage to speak your own truth, whether in whispers or shouts, on paper or in person.